Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. This week our guest is the founder and former editor of the progressive website Think Progress and author of the political newsletter Popular Information, Judd Legum. Now remember, we love taking your questions, so write to politicswarroom@gmail.com. For next week's show, we'll get to as many as we can, but don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can also get text updates about what's next for Politicon and Politics War Room by signing up at Politicon.com. Tell your friends about us. Remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And please check out the links to our sponsors, Smalls and Royo, in our show notes. We thank you for supporting these sponsors because it helps make this podcast happen. Hey, James, right now it looks like Trump is riding high. I'm across the pond in London, and the local newspapers, and to the extent they talk about the American situation, say Trump is winning everything. And on the surface, he is. He got a tariff deal with the EU and with England. He seems to be forcing others to bow to his wishes on tariffs. He got his big, beautiful bill through. The economy for the second quarter was better than the first quarter. He got that judge, Emil Bove, confirmed by a one-vote margin in the Senate. So it looks like Trump is really, really riding high. I think it's pretty much a Prague Spring. Number one, you don't find any Republicans this summer back home talking about the big, beautiful bill. Mike Johnson sent them home so they wouldn't have to talk about Epstein. They don't want to talk about the big, beautiful bill anyway, or they certainly don't want to talk about Medicaid. And I think those economic numbers are a bit of an illusion. I think that businesses, we've been told by people that we respect, are buying inventories, and they are stocking up in inventories and supply chain in anticipation of the tariffs causing problems, which they will later. So I don't think it's going to be so good. And as for Emil Bove, that is such a horrendous choice that really I think it raises questions about a number of those other Republican senators. Tom Tillis said he's retiring so he was a free man, and then he votes for this guy who he knows is eminently sleazy and unqualified. Dave McCormick told Pennsylvanians, yeah, I'm with Trump, but I'm an independent thinker. Bullshit. Because that third district represents Pennsylvania too. So I think there's a lot of things that Trump is doing now that are going to come back to haunt him later.
Well, let's go back to the big, beautiful bill. According to the story of Politico, they got a memo sent out by the NRCC, I guess, National Republican Congressional Campaign Committee, or whatever it is. And they told them to run on it, but they'll have town halls. And if I were the Democrats, I'd say, look, why don't we have a campaign about issues this time? We always talk about we have campaigns about personalities. Is it one of these rare moments where Republicans and Democrats agree on the topic, and that is the big, beautiful bill good or bad? That is an argument that Democrats cannot lose, okay? They can't lose it. This is what the national Republicans are urging them to run on, and this is a rare time in American politics that we have an agreement on what the number one issue should be. And I think we ought to seize this memo. I think that now the memo tells them don't go to town halls, which is kind of funny. I think you can make something out of that. If I were running in like the Pennsylvania 3rd District you just mentioned or something like that, I'd have a town hall every 10 days. All right. And keep inviting him and keep talking, get every effect that the big, beautiful bill would have on whatever congressional district you're in. And it's going to be monumental, not even to mention the increased costs that you're going to have to fund all of this. This is a really good opportunity for Democrats to look big and talk about something that really, really matters to people.
Yeah, I agree. And I looked at a couple Republicans, principally J.D. Vance, who are trying to go out and sell the big, beautiful bill. He was in Pennsylvania, but there were a couple others too. You know what? There's only one part of that bill, James, that he didn't mention. He failed. He talked about tax cuts for tips, tax cuts for seniors, and tax cuts for overtime. didn't mention that most of the big tax cuts went to the affluent. But he forgot in campaigning for the big beautiful bill to mention Medicaid, a $1 trillion cut in Medicaid. Of course, they say no one's going to get really hurt by that. Okay, I agree with you. Join it. It's a great issue.
And you got all kinds of other issues. I mean, we know the veterans issue really has some punch to it. Look at cuts to the weather bureau. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff, and there's stuff that might affect individual states and to agriculture or something like that even more. But there's just no way that we have an election about this that we don't win the election comfortably. And they're going to talk about tax. Whenever as soon as they say tax cuts, you say, yeah, 77% go to people making over $250,000 a year. Why don't we get real tax cuts for real people? And but yeah, I just think this is a winner issue. I've always thought that, and I think they've given us a rare opportunity to really engage.
Yeah, and the only slight difference I have with you is I totally agree on the Democrats. I think the Republicans are going to belatedly realize this, and they're going to start talking a lot more about illegal immigrants, about trans women playing in men's sports, or trans men rather playing in women's sports, and all the other distractions. Because they, over the long run, they can't keep talking about this bill and not lose.
Well, I just don't think that. I think at the point you're going to look silly if you go to trans stuff. Okay, that I think that idea has like come and gone. I think the Democrats realize they're not going to say anything stupid on this again. It's all worn out. I mean, my God, man, we're talking about 1/2 of 1% of the people in the United States. Where this affects every person living. So, and I'm not going to have
big, right?
Campaign over bathrooms.
Well, they're looking. You may well be right. They're looking for distractions. They'll look for something else.
Why don't you pay attention to what your leadership said in Washington and talk about the big beautiful bill? I mean, you got every opportunity to segue or pivot from this or whatever you want. Just don't let them take you there. They're going to try anything they can, but don't let them go there. Don't let them go there.
Right.
And the public is with you.
James, another story, and I hope it doesn't happen, but there are seemingly very credible reports that Harvard may be willing to settle with the administration and pay as much as what's the figure they use? $500 million. That would be a tragedy, because if they do, if Harvard capitulates, it would be, it's like Frankfurt University in 1933. That was the most prestigious German university. And once Hitler beat them down and they started to cave in, it affected every other university. If Harvard caves on this, no university is safe. There's no case that Trump can make on this, and it would really be an act of cowardice. And I don't care, how much their precious $54 billion is earmarked for various causes. They could get through a couple years with sacrifices. So I don't know that they're going to, but if they do, I think it's just an absolute scandal.
This boils down to a fundamental question. What's your view of current America, of the Trump administration? Do you think that this is a 4-year hiatus, some common sense and common decency, and if we just got through it, that things will return to normal, and we just go on with business as usual? Well, if that's your view, then that leads you to, well, I'll compromise with them. It's not going to last long. I got an obligation to my shareholders. I got an obligation to my faculty of students. I got an obligation to this and that. If that's your view, then cowardness is the appropriate response. But if you are of the view that this very idea of Trumpism or MAGAism or whatever you want to call it is a real threat to what the country is, what it stands for, what it wants to be, what it aspires to be, then this is a daddy, what did you do during the war moment? If that is the view that history will have, Davis Polk, Harvard, Paramount, the whole thing is going to look treasonous. Now, my view is the second view. All right. I think this is a utter threat to the country that has been built until this point. I think it threatens everything. And I think the only acceptable response is to be as vigorous in the opposition as you can possibly be. But just so you know, Harvard, I think you're in a daddy, what did you do during the war moment?
Yep, yep. And, the small example we have, all those big New York law firms that caved look a hell of a lot less attractive than firms like Wilmer Hale and Perkins Coie and those firms that stood up and are winning against Trump. They may lose a little bit of business short term, but in the long term, I think I want to be represented by a law firm that cares about principles. And I think that this is a
Well,
showcase
yeah,
for
I
that.
mean, the law firms are one example, but by the companies, to everything else, and the universities, I mean, and you look to these universities as, great American institutions, number one in the world, people come here, and you expect something more out of them. I have greater expectations of elite universities than I do of elite law firms. So therefore, they disappoint me a lot more.
Well, I hope they don't disappoint you,
I don't
James.
think
I'm
they
afraid they
will.
might, though.
I just, it's
Yeah.
it's always this. Look, we had to make a financial decision here. We did what we thought was in the best interest of the university, of its students, faculty, administrators. Well, I guess, and all of you were Frankfurt University in Germany in 1933. I guess you did the pragmatic thing, didn't you? But no one views you very good in history. And I look at it again. It's just boils down to how big of a threat you think this administration is.
Yeah. James, we're going to talk about the Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump saga with our great guest, Judd Legum, in a few minutes. But anything else
But yeah,
particularly on your mind?
a couple of things is I read all the stories, and to the extent they're accurate, the Dems are falling apart, the Dems are disarray. They have a 32% approval rating. They got this, they got that. Okay, that's one side of the story, and that's an often told story. And the truth of the matter is, well, to that extent, is true. Uh, Roy Cooper announced for U.S. Senate state of North Carolina. Now, we know Governor Cooper. He's been on the show. We're great admirers of his. He's not a national figure in that sense. He's certainly not a ideological favorite of any branch of the party. I mean, I would say that his governing style of philosophy is, very pragmatic. He raised $3.4 million in 24 fucking hours, most of it in donations of $100 or less. Now think about that. Think about that. Then I start looking at some of the polls and I'm starting to measure voter enthusiasm. That's one thing that we've learned over the years. That number matters. That's a number that really matters. I saw it. It's like the Democrats are 20 points more enthusiastic than the Republicans about voting. Now, the off-year election is fall of 26, but that's a big ass number. And the third thing is, I don't know if we're going to be able to count as high as Spanberger's going to win in Virginia. And I don't think
Yeah.
that people are ready. I've been through a lot of cycles. I've been through cycles that I knew we were going to lose. Everybody has. But boy, when you lose it and you look at the size of it, you go, oh, God. And I think that's what we're going to be faced with. That's what I really do. So, but I see low approval ratings for the Democratic Party. I see high enthusiasm. I see people, small donors, which is a good measure of energy around the country. And I see winning special elections everywhere.
And
Right.
Trump,
So
I
I see $100 donors stepping up, understanding where the country is, what's the importance of this. And unfortunately, I see Harvard University shrinking about a second. About a second. A lot of people in this country understand the threat we face with. I believe that.
Well, you're so right. It's a threat that's not
Yeah,
going to go away.
it's going to
I
get
could not
worse.
agree more.
Give your cats the food they deserve. We're small. My cat. I had a stray cat out here, my coastal Mississippi, and a cat died. I've never been a big cat person. Before I got very attached to that cat. When they're well fed, it matters. They fur is very silky. They happy. It's critical. I mean, you really get attached to these animals.
Yeah, you sure can. Yeah, we've always felt like cat people, um, which I'm not a prime one, although members of my family are. But that's why we are so proud to support our sponsor, Smalls. Before finding out about them, we didn't realize that the cat food most people rely on has questionable ingredients. That's why we are so glad this podcast is sponsored by Smalls. Smalls cat food has protein packed recipes made with the preservative free ingredients you'd find in your fridge, all delivered right to your door. That's why Cats.com named Smalls their best overall cat food. And right now, you can get 60% off your first order plus free shipping. Just head to smalls.com/war room for a limited time only. Now, Smalls was started back in 2017 by a couple of guys home cooking cat food in small batches for their friends. A few short years later, they serve millions of meals to cats across the United States. Plus, Smalls works with Humane World for Animals, donating over $1 million worth of food through them to help cats. They even give you a chance to donate at checkout, whether you donate $5 for flea and tick medications or $7 for vaccines. So don't just listen to us. Small's customer, Elizabeth C., expressed how, quote, her cat was always so so with her usual food, but is very enthusiastic about Smalls. Her breath is much better, and let's just say that the litter stays fresher too. End quote. James, noticed a crazy change in his cat's energy once they realized they could enjoy real food from Smalls instead of burnout kibble. Now he's never going back. It couldn't be more clear. One of the many things cat owners love most about Smalls is that you can even add other cat favorites like amazing treats and snacks for a full feline feast. What are you waiting for? Give your cat the food they deserve for a limited time only because you're a Politics War Room listener. You can get 60% off your first Smalls order plus free shipping when you head to smalls.com/war room. That's 60% off when you head to smalls.com/war room plus free shipping. Again, that's smalls.com/war room. The link is in our show note. James, our guest, Judd Legum, does as good, tough, hard hitting investigative pieces about the gang of crooks that are populating Washington today than anyone I know. Judd, I think the most recent, of course, is the Epstein saga. You wrote about it again today. We have a new excuse now. I mean, they started off by saying, well, it was a real estate deal. And so Trump, decided that he would get rid of his relationship with Epstein. And then it was, well, no, There were other things that were involved, and he just thought he was a creep. Now we find out it's because he says that Epstein was stealing young girls who were working in the locker room at Mar-a-Lago. Something tells me there's a lot more to this story, Judd.
It was really stunning that he would just come out and say this yesterday, having not said it for many years, even though he's been asked repeatedly, pretty much every day for the last 4 or 5 days about what was going on, never mentioned this until this week. And it makes me think that perhaps he knew that this was going to come out anyway and was trying to get in front of it. I don't know any other reason why you would now introduce this new fact that not only did you have this relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, but he was actually recruiting people from your spa, a 16-year-old, including a 16-year-old girl who was one of his, most prominent victims, and that you knew about that. And what he said was, once he learned about that, that's when he kicked Epstein out of the club. But the timing does not work out. The timeline does not work out because this woman, Virginia Giuffre, she was hired, I guess in Trump's word, by Epstein in 2000. She was associated with him and was abused by him from 2000 to 2002. According to Trump's attorney, the attorney for the Trump Organization, in 2019 said that Epstein remained a member of the club until 2007, which would be 7 years after Virginia Giuffre was hired. So it doesn't match up with what he said before. I think it's highly damaging that he knew about this recruitment effort from his club, and I think it raises a lot of questions.
Well, it does, Judd, and I think he is. If there was nothing there, he would have had everything released and all that. I don't know what's there, but he clearly has been lying about stuff. But he's got a Justice Department that's in his back pocket. So therefore, what can be done? I mean, I assume that maybe there is some bad stuff about Trump and others, but what can be done?
Well, I don't think it's really. I think you're right. I don't think it's a legal problem for him. I don't. I don't think you're going to see the Justice Department
Right.
taking on the president. It doesn't seem to be something that's going to end up in court. But I think it is a real political problem for him because what you have to do is if you kind of roll back the timeline here, Trump was really up until this year when he took office, really pumping up this Epstein stuff. I mean, it was only in February that he invited a group of right-wing influencers, online influencers. They took pictures in front of the White House with big binders that said Epstein Files Volume 1, sort of suggesting there's going to be more coming out. And that was because it's all tied up in this QAnon conspiracy, which are his, core supporters here. And he really doesn't know anything to do with his core supporters other than rile them up further. So he was really playing into this. Now it's become a political problem because for whatever reason, he does not want the full information out there. I think that Wall Street Journal report about this birthday message that he sent to Epstein, which is, reads like some sort of cryptic confession. I don't know what it was about, but it doesn't seem good. And Trump views it as so damaging that he's now sued the Wall Street Journal for $10 billion as a result of publishing that. He has not been able to follow through. And so now he's caught between his desire to move on from this story and some of his very core, sort of the center of his support, who are really riled up about it. And the question is, like, where is his not legal exit, but where's his political exit for this?
Well, on that Murdoch suit, I'll take Murdoch and give the points. I don't think there's any way. I think Trump is going to drop that if it ever comes to discovery so quickly, because it's absurd suit. But let me, this is this case is so full of weird ins and outs. I am worried frankly, about Todd Blanche spending 5 hours with Ghislaine Maxwell. And I'll tell you why I'm worried about it, Judd. I think I can see they at one point might say, and I think Trump is directing this whole thing. I mean, when Bondi told the Attorney General told Trump about this 2 months ago, 3 months ago, this is all being directed by Trump. I have a great fear that they're going to get Ms. Maxwell to say, well, it doesn't really involve Donald Trump. And then guess what? Maybe 6 months later, guess who's going to get a pardon? I think, frankly, a pardon would really, I mean, she's a sexual predator. She's as bad as Epstein and should not have any credibility. But am I just being a conspiracy crazed left winger when I say I'm worried about this?
I don't think so. If you go back to if you go back to who's the person who could really make this even worse for Trump, if you look back to the letter, that's maybe the most damaging specific thing that's out there right now. Who could contradict Trump that this isn't authentic? Well, it's Maxwell, because she was the one who put that book together.
Right.
She knows whether that was a letter that was by Trump or not. And also, if you look at what was revealed yesterday by Trump when he said, Virginia Giuffre was recruited and that's why he kicked Epstein out, it would be Maxwell who would know about that. She was actually the one, according to the court transcripts, and there's been some that have been released, she was the one who went into the spot and recruited Virginia Giuffre for Epstein. So she would know about that too and would know what Trump might have done in response. That's really the question in my mind is, okay, you knew this man was recruiting a 16-year-old girl. What did you do? Did you do anything? So I don't know if he will pardon her, but I think it's very clear because he's been asked so many times, and he could very easily just say, I'm not considering a pardon for someone who was convicted of sexually trafficking dozens of underage girls. That doesn't seem to be like too hard of a thing to do. But he has not, because I think he definitely wants Maxwell to think that there is a chance that he could pardon her, because she's right now scheduled to be behind bars until 2040, at which time she will be an elderly woman, pretty much like 80 years old, something like that. And I assume, just like anyone, she wants to get out. And the only person who can really get her out is Donald Trump. So he's now sending a very strong signal to her that this is something under consideration. And I think she would know that, volunteering information about Trump's role is not going to get her the pardon.
James, pick up on all this.
Yeah, so first of all, I have general disagreement with both of you as much as I respect you. I wish he would fucking pardon her. No one is going to believe one word that comes out of her mouth. All right. Secondly, look at the sentencing memorandum from the Southern District of New York after she was convicted. They had her cold on 3 or 4 counts of perjury. They just decided not that they couldn't convict her instantly. So, and that would be, in my opinion, what you keep trying to throw a log on this fire. It's burning so big. Who knows what another, if it absorbs another log pretty easily. That would be like throwing a whole forest on top of it. But I want to ask you about something, Judd. And this is this Virginia lady that was working for Trump. She was 16 years old. Did she end up committing suicide?
She did commit suicide this April.
Right. So my point on all is we're dealing with real human beings who were really, really, really screwed up. But so she's 16 years old. She's working in the spa. Could there be some child labor violation there?
I guess it really depends on what she was doing. Certainly you can hire a 16-year-old. I think you can hire a 16-year-old work at a spa. There's usually, the amount of hours, that kind of thing, when you can work. But yes. And I think the other thing is there, who's this other person who was recruited? Because there's no record of that. that another second person was recruited from Mar-a-Lago. So, yeah.
So, I hear people, and I heard this a lot during the Lewinsky thing. They're not handling this right. They're just kicking the story. Actually, there was no fucking good way to handle it, right? There's no good way for Trump to handle the story. Because no one is, and by the way, the Lewinsky story turned out to actually be factual, but the public never gave a shit. We were, high 50s from the beginning of people that just didn't, just thought this was, as Jeffrey Toobin said, a grown man acting foolish at the office and knew his wife to find out. This is entirely different.
Oh, yeah.
But they can't spin it because the truth, it seems to me, is so horrific to have to lie about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the effort, the big swing that they tried on this was putting out that memo. Now, no one signed the memo because I guess no one wanted their name on it, saying, hey, they've looked at this. They've done there is no client list. There's no more prosecutions, and this is over. I mean, that was when Trump was attempting to kind of bite the bullet. But really, every day since then, there's been more and more interest, more and more things come out. So is there a way to handle it? I don't think so, unless it's the case, which it doesn't seem to be, that Trump really doesn't have anything to hide here, in which case you'd think that they would just put everything out and be done with it. But if Trump does have something, then I think, yeah, it's a bind. And he clearly views whatever is going on right now, and it has damaged him politically, at least in the short term, as preferable to the full story coming out.
So I'll turn it back over. I'll just make one point. To me, a key figure in this is Melania. Okay. And I think that's at the bottom of what they don't want to get out, because it was all modeling agencies. Remember, Trump had a modeling agency. Then Epstein got into the modeling agency, and Jean-Luc Bernal, the guy in Paris in the model agency, that hung himself. 2 out of the 3 people ended up hanging themselves. There is, I really believe this, Judd. There is a deep, dark secret somewhere underneath all this. I really believe.
There could be a deep, dark secret, but also you're right about these modeling agencies, and that's not even secret. I mean, these were used to essentially entrap young women, some of which were underage, some of which weren't, to be sexually abused, to be exploited, kind of lured over to Europe, um, promised modeling contracts, but then they have no real way of getting around, no real way of supporting themselves except if they, do what they're told. So that really happened. I think they're mixed up on that. I do agree with you, by the way, that if Trump were to pardon Maxwell, that would make things much worse, which is why I obviously don't know what he's going to do, but it's why I suspect he just wants to kind of get that idea in her head. Because if you do that, even without pardoning her, you get most of the benefit for Trump. He doesn't have to actually pardon her. He just can't rule it out. Because if he rules it out, then she has nothing to lose, and this is, there was this congressional subpoena, which she now says she's not going to comply with, but, she was subpoenaed by Congress and the Republicans were on board with this to bring her in. It was supposed to be August 11th. It doesn't look like that's going to happen now, but that was on the table.
Back to you, one person that knows a lot is Harvey Weinstein. Somebody ought to go out and talk to him. He'd be very knowledgeable about the modeling business in Manhattan, 90s.
Judd, this is just a sickening scandal. But you've written about a lot more in Trump's short second term, whether it's cryptocurrency or his kids running around cutting deals with dictators for hotels and shopping centers. What's at the top of your Trump grifting scandals?
One thing that I can't imagine it's hard to understand and why it's not a bigger deal really involves, kind of what Kushner is doing and how he created this, private equity fund. No experience, by the way, in private equity. It's all funded by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, mostly all foreign governments. Uh, by the way, the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, their board decided it was a bad deal for them to invest $2 billion and recommended against it, and then they were overruled by the Crown Prince. But what's happened is he's taken this money, he's got pulled together, he's got several $1 billion, and now he's using it to partner with the Trump organization to build a Trump Tower, um, and over in Europe, and I think it's in it, and in the Middle East, and it's really functioning as a slush fund for foreign governments to funnel money, to Trump. Um, and this was something that people paid attention to a little bit in his first term, but actually it's much worse now in his second term. In his first term, he committed not to do any new foreign deals in his first term. He put out an ethics statement, presumably because these foreign deals were going to be such, would just be, impossible to defend. Getting in business with, on foreign soil. But now, not only is he doing foreign deals, he's dealing directly with foreign governments, both through Kushner and directly through the Trump organization. So that, to me, is something that gets very, very little attention.
Judd, you've also done some tough stuff on the media. You had a tough piece on the Van de High Mike Allen puff piece on Donald Trump the other day. I mean, your mandate is widespread.
Yeah, I think the topic of my newsletter is whatever I think the topic should be that day. That's how I kind of do it. But overall, I think it's about, to me, I'm interested in people with power and influence. I mean, I think that's the through line here. And a lot of the times now, it's not really. I mean, I think obviously, the president's important, the government's important, but it's really these handful of people who have incredible amounts of wealth and are using that to exert political influence. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, whether it's an institution like the Washington Post or others, are now being, I think, sort of pushed in different directions, not because that's the essentially the way to create the best media product or journalism or inform the public, but because it suits the interests of the people who own these outlets.
Judd, you do so much. What kind of a staff do you have?
Well, right now I've got 3 full-time people who help me. So I've got a good amount of help. And I mean, I think I like this. It exists on the website, but I like this newsletter format because I'm putting out 4 things a week. When I used to run just the website, we would do 12 things a day. So that's that's almost 60 things a week. So I think for me, do it 4 things a week. You can really put some time into it, and that's what I do. I like. I've really always been a researcher at heart. I like digging around and seeing what you can find and what connections you can put together that maybe aren't out there yet.
Well, 4 times a week, it's essential reading for me. It's Judd at Popular Information, and it really is. You can't go wrong. It is. There's something new I learn almost with every single newsletter, Judd. You do a fabulous job. So all you out there, it's Judd at Popular Information. And thanks for being on this show.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right, man. Thank you. I'll come back sometimes. We love you. We love you, right? We really do.
Thanks so much.
Get the good grains with Royo. Look, this is something I do know something about. The better po' boy shops in New Orleans have bread delivered 3 times a day. And when you go to the store and you buy a loaf of bread and you come back and 6 days later, you say, hey, I can still eat this. No, that's not what you want, because that means it's stuck with all those preservatives and bullshit.
Yeah, and you remember the old school food pyramid. Carbs were the heroes. These days, it's all about protein, and bread's been put on the naughty list. Luckily, we found that people still making the good stuff. We remember from the days before you could only find that stale, flavorless, preservative filled, and plastic wrapped loaves you find in most supermarkets. So when the artisan bakers at Royo sent us their variety box of quote unquote healthy breads and bagels, we fully expected it to be, the dry and boring stuff. Fact check. You couldn't be more wrong. Royo's offerings taste amazing. You're going to want to try everything they have when you hear about the best part. Everything is baked fresh daily with super clean and minimal ingredients. Plus, it's all low in carbs with higher fiber and protein than what you're used to. Some of their products only have 2 net carbs. So if you're like James and me and always want to keep looking summer ready, Royo is for you. The keto cinnamon raisin bagels are a huge hit. My kid loves those. And it might be taboo these days, but when you put on some organic salted butter, it's pure perfection. I know so many people who would eat them all in one sitting when they find out how good they are. I might be one of them, but it's something you should try for yourself. After all, Royo breads are so good, you'll forget they're healthier than the other stuff out there. Plus, we got you 20% off. Just go to eatroyo.com and use our promo code PWR for your 20% off. That's promo code PWR at eatroyo, ROYO.com. And the link is in our show notes. Now for the outrage of the week. I'm picking up on something James mentioned earlier. I keep reading all of these conservative pundits and even some Democrats that talk about how bad the Democratic Party is doing these days. And then they turn to the New York City mayor's race and say that this Democratic socialist is going to win. That shows the left wing is dominating the Democratic Party. Utter, complete nonsense. Much better guide is to look at 2 larger states, Virginia and New Jersey, that have statewide elections for governor and other offices this November. And I'll tell you this, in New Jersey, the Republican candidate, Trump endorsed heavy Trump guy, Jack, I think it's Citarelli, came within 3 points of Phil Murphy last time, the governor. If he doesn't lose, if Mikey Sherrill doesn't beat him by more than 3 points in November, I'm going to come back to you and say, okay, you right wing pundits, maybe I overstated how bad you are. But then I want to go to Virginia too and note that Republicans swept all the statewide offices 4 years ago. Glenn Youngkin, who's proven to be a total failure as governor, beat Terry McAuliffe by 2 points. If Abigail Spanberger doesn't win, I think, by something close to or exceeding double digits, then I'll come back to you and say you're wrong. But New York City is a guide to New York City. That's it.
Well, I agree, and I think that Spanberger is going to win by in double digits, and I think Cheryl's going to win by a lot more than 3 points. I guess my outrage is one of the best conspiracy theorist stories I've heard was actually by Ezra Klein. So this guy, conspiracy theorist, dies, goes to heaven to see God. And he asked God, who killed Kennedy? And God said, well, Lee Harvey Oswald. And the guy says, this thing goes much higher than I thought. In other words, you can't convince these people about that. So they had a conspiracy theory that they were elite coastal people who were trafficking in young females. And we dismissed that. Is kind of lunacy, all right? And then the guy shows up at Comet Pizza. I mean, thank God no one got hurt, but it was almost comical because he thought Hillary is running a child sex something in the basement. But sometimes even a conspiracy theorist gets right because there was a child trafficking going on. It was by coastal elites. There's nothing about Jeffrey Epstein that doesn't scream coastal elite. He went to the Dalton School. Okay, I think Harvard. He was the epitome of a coastal elite. He was running, by every account, child sex trafficking, and up to the point that these people committing suicide, were kind of ruined for life. So I got to say, the liberal establishment, or whatever you call it, we didn't get it right. They got it. They got it right. There was tax trafficking. They got it right. It was coastal elites. The only thing they got wrong was what branch of coastal elitism was doing this. So maybe we shouldn't just dismiss this out of hand. So all you conspiracy theorists out there, think a broken clock is right twice a day. You got this. If you get 2/3 of something, that's a good score. That translates into an 8. And I'm not even grading. I'm not grading on a curve. So congratulations to conspiracy theorists everywhere.
Okay. All right, now for our listener questions. They're so good. And again, if we don't get to yours this week, we'll send it back in. We'll try next week. Cindy in rural Idaho, James says, what can we do to teach the Republicans in deep red states that they are voting against their own interest?
So you're like me. You're a blue guy in a red state. I not much. By now they hadn't figured it out. They're probably
You're not going to give Cindy any hope.
You can maybe loosen a few up, but if after all of this, of them getting screwed, blued, and tattooed, and this is where they are, that there's probably, I say this, but there's probably some darkness in their heart. I wish I'd give you a better answer, but sometimes I don't think Idaho's going to change. But stay as great people. If you like it, it's a beautiful state. Stay true to what you are and what you believe, and maybe you'll get a Democrat or two some along the way.
And keep working it, Cindy. John, who is a loyal follower from Gurnee, Illinois, says, is the most dangerous illusion in America right now that if Trump falls, the threat will disappear? Boy, you got that, John. Trumpism is not going to go away. I hope they lose elections. But these people are in it for the long run. And I think the Project 2025 types have no intentions of going into the woodwork where they belong. And I think the threat of Trumpism is going to exist for well after 2028.
All right, so we know that judiciary is going to outlast him for a long time. So that's
right.
1 out of 3 branches of government.
Right.
The way to look at this was MAGA always waited for somebody to stoke it up, and it will be there after Trump's gone, or was Trump a unique one-off problem? I think the first explanation, I think Trumpism or MAGAism will outlive Trump, unfortunately. Now, if it could split, Trump was able to really rack the people up and get them out when he was on the ballot. But it's going to be a problem going forward in the Republican Party because the old Republican Party is just not coming back. There's no market for it. There's no enthusiasm for it. no one wants a kind of Reagan kind of conservatism anymore. That's not what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's for sure. James, you mentioned him earlier. John and Charlotte ask, is Roy Cooper too old?
No. He's running for the, I mean, first of all, he's a hell of a lot younger than Chuck Grassley.
He's only 24 years or 25 years younger than Chuck Grassley.
And I think he's perfectly willing to be served at least 6 years in the United States. And by the way, I think he's going to serve 6 years in the United States Senate. And I just like the idea of him being there. You know, we focus a lot on governors, and we should. There are a lot of really talented Democratic governors out there. We tend to forget how many really talented Democratic senators there are. And I mean, I don't want to start naming names because but I mean, I will name a few, like Sheldon Whitehouse. That guy is an effective, necessary United States senator. He got our good friend Senator King. Senator Murphy, Senator Gallego. I mean, there's some really talented, and I know I'm leaving some of you out, but I'm doing that on purpose. But just to make the point that we got some real talented people, and I think we're going to have a Senator Roy Cooper who's going to fit right in at that level of talent.
Absolutely. I think you mentioned the Virginia guys, but it certainly would be that.
Both Virginia. I can't say it. That's why I hate naming things, but both are Virginia senators.
So I'm going to make it even more painful and say we can't forget Alyssa Slotkin because
I know. Yeah,
I know.
There's a lot of people we're forgetting, so we got to keep forgetting them. So let's try to segue. I was just trying to the general point I'm making is there's a lot of senatorial talent in the Democratic Party. We tend to talk about the governors more, and Governor Cooper was certainly part of that gubernatorial talent. And I think he's certainly going to be part of the senatorial talent.
So he's now a twofer when it comes to quality.
Yes, and for everybody else, I left you about for no reason. The list would be too long.
James John in Sonoma, California says is the only chance to impeach Trump evidence of crimes with Epstein. John, please delete impeach from your vocabulary now. It's just not going to happen. And I think he's committed 10 impeachable offenses. But just given where we are today, I think it would be counterproductive to try to pursue any kind of impeachment against Trump. And as for crimes, you have a Justice Department that's in his back pocket.
Yeah, there's so much here, but we're not going to be able to impeach him. But again, I go back to what I said. It depends on how you look at this. If you look at this as something that's 4 years, we just have to gut through it. That's one way to look at it. The way that I think you and I look at it is, this is an existential threat to the whole idea of the United States.
Jono in Santa Cruz, California, says generic polling has Dems up by 3. He says when historically they were up at +8 or more prior to a midterm when the Republicans had a trifecta. I'm not sure of that, but that's what he says. So are we doing historically badly? Yet Mondami crushes it in New York City. Does he have the message we need for the midterms?
Well, first of all, I would pay very little attention to congressional generic this far out. What I would pay attention to: fundraising, actual elections, retirements, recruiting, everything else. I got to say, all of that points in the blue direction right now. Every intangible that you can think of is pointing blue. There was a Wall Street Journal poll that had Trump higher than most, and we're big admirers of the poll. But I don't think his approval is 46. I think it's real politics around 41. I think that's a more accurate reflection of where we are. But I don't. I think we're heading into a pretty doggone good cycle here.
Yeah. I agree. I think those numbers are.
And they're probably real, but I don't think they mean anything right now.
Yeah, and it's very very few people have really focused on it yet. But anyway, Tracy and Johns Creek, Georgia. Where's Johns Creek, Georgia, James?
I think it's metropolitan Atlanta, but it's always a good guess when you're trying to figure out where something is in Georgia.
Anyway, Tracy asked, what is the primary impediment to a viable third party? First of all, Tracy, it would be history. Secondly, maybe there's a need for one. One can argue that, but what is it? What's the niche? Is it, to the right of Trump? Is it kind of a more moderate Republican one? If you have a more moderate Republican one, you're not going to pick up any of the MAGA people. You're not going to get very many Democrats. These people who love to write columns sometimes talk about, moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans getting together for a third party. First of all, moderate Democrats basically dominate their party now. So why would they want to leave?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, and it's a designer third party. So you create the party that you would like to see. Well, that's not very good because you're just one person, all right? And
Right.
it generally are people that say, "Look, James, I don't agree with Republicans. I have nothing against gay people. I don't know why we spend all the time. I'm actually, if anything, I'm pro-choice, but I like their economic policy. Oh, fuck you. Tell me one time that a Republican economic policy has produced better results than under Democrats. That's, of course, that's one of my great truths in life is that, if you want prosperity, it's pretty simple. You vote Democratic. But yeah, there's just not a need. And I think that the Democrats, if we continue direction we're going, we're going to pick up some kind of moderate form of Republicans anyway.
Yep. I agree. Final question is from Gina in Casper, Wyoming, who says that Megyn Kelly and Rahm Emanuel were recently talking about, can a man become a woman? Why can't Democrats recognize there's no good answer because the questioner has defined the question? The answer has to redefine the question. Thoughts?
So, I was talking about Rob. Yeah, so, Ruben Gallego, Gavin Newsom, and Seth Moulton have all said that they don't want their daughters competing against people who were born male. Okay, again, that's probably in both. All three of them are very, very good, very thoughtful people, and they're also very political, as is Rahm. This was a giant losing issue for Democrats. I'm sorry. Somebody had the idea that this was the new civil rights, this was the new gay rights, this was the new women's rights, and it was just an idea whose time had not come. It's
James, I'll give you one more. Martina Navratilova, one of the greatest tennis champions of all times and a very strong feminist, says, I'm sorry, we should not be having...
This just doesn't sit well with people, all right? It just doesn't. And all they're doing is bringing harm to these children who are already vulnerable. Trans kids have higher suicide rates, they have higher mental health rates. And the more that you throw them in the middle of all this, I don't think it helps outcomes. Yeah. I really don't.
All right. We love those questions. Please keep them coming in. And as I said before, if we didn't get to yours this week, we'll try to get to it next week. So thank you. Hey, thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. As always, send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. Following this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you'd check out the links to our sponsors, Smalls and Royo, in our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting them because when you do, you help make this podcast happen. Now, to keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And check out our Substack at politicswarroom.com. James and I are constantly adding new content, so go take a look. You can also find other shows you might enjoy in the Politicon YouTube channel or when you search Politicon on your favorite podcast sites. And remember, please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room planning.